Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the show. We've got an awesome guest on tonight. I will introduce him in a second, but with the usual gang, we've got the mighty Paul Rimmer and the awesome Patrick McGinnis. And I've already said to David before, I'm calling him a legend. He is a legend, well known throughout all of Northern Ireland and Britain. You have a big Twitter following, a couple of 100,000 people following you on Twitter. Very active there. And you have your own website. And I have put these links into our description. But welcome to the show, David. Welcome.
No, thank you very much for having me. And as I said before we joined, I am regularly called many things, and legend is possibly one of the kindest ones. So that balances some of the other stuff. So you're very kind, John. Thank you for the introduction.
Well, obviously it's Northern Ireland tonight. We have discussed it in the past. We've had Jolene on discussing it and amongst other things. But our party's now registered in Northern Ireland, and we're looking for people to run in local elections and stand up and be counted. I'm running, Pat's running, we've got a few other people running, and I'm very confident that I will get a local council seat in the next few years. Very confident. That's the northwestern of England confidence in me. But we'll get on with the show. Paul, what do you want to say about the Northern Ireland Protocol Windsor Framework?
Well, today's a day of rejoicing, really, because they seem to have resolved the issue. I mean, all parties now have accepted it. Brussels have accepted it, and the British government are going ahead with it. You know, it seems to secure normalisation of Ulster into the United Kingdom and maintain the links with the Republic. Now, this is only one aspect of the future of Northern Ireland. There are many big issues in Ireland and Northern Ireland about the future. One issue I'd love to talk about is the Great Replacement, the incredible mass immigration into Ireland, which is going to transform what is a small country, and Northern Ireland is a small part of a small country. It has the potential to absolutely transform Northern Ireland within a decade. So we have to, what's the political response to that? We need to actually discuss that. But at the moment, I think we just need to, it's going to be interesting to see how the politics of Northern Ireland develop now, given that Sinn Féin will lead the new assembly. And we all know what Sinn Féin's about. Pat?
Over to David Vance.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay. Let me approach these things in my own particular fashion, because
We've got an echo coming up.
yeah,
Is it me? Hang on a second.
might be you, Paul. Yeah, because I can hear myself twice, and ordinarily, Pat, once is adequate for me. So, if I could talk about this from a local point of view and also from a broader UK point of view, because I think there's different aspects to this conversation. Some of it's relevant to people in Northern Ireland, but most of it's relevant to everyone in the UK. So just you know, it's funny. I was listening to the whole shenanigans last night, and it reminded me of 25 years. I've been around a long time now. 25 years ago, I remember being in correspondence with a young and upcoming unionist, and we exchanged back. That was pre-internet, you know. We exchanged letters back and forth, and this young unionist was furious that his leader was selling out Northern Ireland. Who was his name, you might ask? Let me tell you, his name was Jeffrey Donaldson, and he walked out at midnight virtually when David Trumbull was in the process of selling out Northern Ireland via the Good Friday Agreement. So if you hang around long enough, history repeats itself, you know, and now we have the mighty Jeffrey having problems, let's say, trying to flog this. And Paul, I have to say, to me, this is an unspeakable deal. It's a betrayal of the union for reasons I can explain here in Northern Ireland, but it's also a betrayal. And the bigger problem actually lies for anyone who thought they were getting Brexit. If anyone ever believed you're getting Brexit, have I good news for you? You ain't getting Brexit. And this is fundamentally the broader issue. But on the local issue, you know, as I say, maybe I'm just cynical because I've been around. But this Great New Deal, the breakthrough, it's not. It's a breakdown. It's not a breakthrough. Number one, nothing fundamentally has changed beyond the DUP accepting that they will go back in to an executive that they had 7 tests before they could even countenance it. They're being bunched. Let's be honest, cut to the chase. They're being bunched like Trimble was bunched, like Paisley was bunched. And that's because the power of the British establishment is massive. It's massive. You know, these individuals don't get to where they are without, shall we say, certain informations being obtained on them. So they're ultimately pliable or malleable as well. And that's what you're seeing. So, I mean, when I woke up this morning and the BBC were telling me it's a breakthrough, fantastic news, the future is safe, I just laughed because that's what the BBC would do. So this is the British establishment and the DUP leadership, but not all of it, in cahoots to try and give people the idea we've solved the problem of the Northern Ireland Protocol. Well, you ain't. All you've done is, you know, you've painted over the kind of the east-west corridor, the barrier in the Irish Sea. You've painted it red, white, and blue, but it's still there. It's still a seawall. How laughable that they're trying to say, no, we've totally sorted it out. And as for the actual Article of Union, Article 6 of Union, they've done nothing about that. Not a word has changed. Not a word's been removed from the protocol. Zilch. All that's happened is, and this always happens, all those wordsmiths from Cambridge University and Oxford University working for the government, they've conjured up new flimsy words, which the likes of Donaldson and his associates then try to sell, hoping that the people will just swallow their words. But the fundamentals, nothing has changed. So there's a first point, right? Second point, and this is for you guys, this is for everybody in the UK listening to this. What the UK, what essentially the UK government is doing here, it's actually got nothing to do with Northern Ireland, sort of, and everything to do with the desire of the British government to reverse the United Kingdom back into the EU. Because what they've said is, oh, to keep the safe. Hi, I see some of the people joining. I know them. What the UK government has said, you know, in that pious way, oh, we want to get peace in Northern Ireland, so we promise EU we will not diverge from your very important regulation. Oh no, we won't do that. 2016, we voted specifically for that. So what they're doing is, and they've been at this since then, I wonder, do you guys agree? I believe the British government wants us back one way or t'other in the EU, under EU control. Northern Ireland remains in the single market. Nothing's changed. But the difference is, the big difference, the rest of the UK is fundamentally in the single market for goods, if this goes through. So it's the whole of the EU, the UK, that's being screwed over. Northern Ireland, we're being sold out, but we're used to that. And all done by a Conservative government, which makes you think, what will it be like when Keir Starmer gets in? What do you think that's going to be like? You think that's going to strengthen our union, our sovereignty as a country? Of course not. You know, the enemy is located at Westminster. And they're different parties, you know, they're not in your party, but they're in these establishment parties. And they're very happy to, as I say, reverse us into the EU, sell out Northern Ireland. We are now aligned on an all-Ireland 32-county basis if this goes through. And I did see Mary Lou MacDonald of Sinn Féin saying, quote, United Ireland is now within sight. She said that. That's weird, isn't it? Really weird. So this Jeffrey Donaldson tells us this deal strengthened the union. Mary Lou saying, we're getting closer and closer. We're going to get you on a 32-county goods trading basis, and then we'll introduce other things as well. So look, it's a complete scam. Like the Belfast Agreement was a complete scam, and I called it out and I resisted it. And you know, I say this for what it is, guys, but the bigger problem is for everyone in England, Scotland, and Wales, you are being reabsorbed into the EU. That's the bit to understand. How big a betrayal is that of the 17.4 million that voted in 2016. That they're betraying the million unionists here. They couldn't give a toss about us, but they're betraying all the Brexiteers as well. All done by a Tory government. We've got, so many traders in the UK. It's remarkable. We've got a surplus of traders. But listen, all we can do is expose them, call them out. Just like, that's the only way we can resist, I think. Sorry, that's more than enough for me. Sorry, you guys come in.
I think we have to put it in a political context, Obviously, the Tory government is deeply unpopular and is facing a landslide defeat at the next election.
Yeah.
And we know that the Labour Party is gung-ho to take us back into the EU.
Yeah.
So this might just be a stepping stone for them in that direction. Now, within Ireland itself, things have changed dramatically, haven't they, over the past? You talked about you being involved for 25 years. I was looking at the demographics of Northern Ireland. I mean, 25 years ago, places like the county of Londonderry and the county of Armagh and the county of Tyrone were 50-50, green and orange. Now they're like 2/3 green. So there's been a demographic movement here, which is undermining really the political strength of Northern Ireland. I just wonder how far if Sinn Féin are now the largest party in the Assembly.
Yeah.
How far can Northern Ireland go forward without compromising?
Well, see, John, Paul, those are really good questions you've asked there and points that you've raised. If I can deal with them, first of all, yes, demographic change here in this small country, Northern Ireland, is very real and very evident on a whole range of different demographics, But if I could sort of say the demographic change in the Irish Republic is in some ways greater. So the bit that makes me smile is they're never going to get a united Ireland because it's impossible. Because it looks like the Republic of Ireland is uniting with Somalia. If I look at some of the demographics. So, I mean, listen, Mary Lou McDonald, don't you be worrying about Northern Ireland. Of course, she's part of it. In the Irish Republic, all the main political parties are captured. I'm sure, Paul, I see you nodding, you agree. They've all been captured by globalism. So in a weird way, the old differences kind of don't matter. So I find myself aligned with people who would have been quite staunch Irish Republicans in the Irish Republic. And I respect their point of view. They're saying to me, David, we've been sold out. We're screwed. Because when we see, like you've seen all the refugees and the vast numbers that are being imported to the Irish Republic, then that means that Ireland, as I say, is going to change out of all recognition. I believe the Irish are going to be a minority in the Irish Republic in about 25 years, definite, based on what the 2040 plan is and stuff. So they're going to be a minority. And I think they'll have bigger issues than trying to worry about how do you integrate people like us. So, Paul, it's interesting because nothing stays the same. That's the one thing you do know in life. Everything changes. So the Irish demographics are changing. I find myself aligned with Irish Republicans because all they want is sovereignty of their own country. That's all you want, a UK. We all want the same. We want to be sovereign. Globalism says, no, you can't. That's why, the UK, England, good God, look at England. You're being dramatically changed. Demographically, Paul, but England's got 60 million population. The whole of England, Scotland, Wales are about 70 million. You cannot, you can't change that, Paul. That demographic just as quickly. But the Irish Republic is about 4 or 5 million. You can change that really, really fast, and that's what's happening. So I think Ireland's going to fall first. Ireland's going to, and so I don't get overexcited about Sinn Féin this and Sinn Féin that. And the nationalism and the unionism. I don't get excited about that. All I care about is my freedom, my right to go about my life. I care about that. And I do care about, my British identity. I kind of care about that because after all, that's what my passport says. So it's the Chinese curse is, may you live in interesting times, and no one's going to dispute that. We live in very interesting times. So there's big changes happening across.
Yeah, it's trying to get to grips with the shifting sands. As you say, Northern Ireland's a small country, Ireland itself is a small island, and the sands are shifting very quickly, not only because of the demographic transformation through immigration, which is going to change Ireland. And I was in Dublin 5 years ago. It's a global city. I was there 40 years ago, and it was a different place.
Yeah.
It's a global city now. It's no longer even feels Irish, to be honest.
Yep.
Now, that will come to Northern Ireland. The mass immigration will hit Northern Ireland. And don't forget that the Roman Catholic Church are gung-ho for the Islamization of Ireland. They're gung-ho. They're promoting it at every corner. The Roman Catholic Church itself has imploded. It's turning away from its traditional doctrines. The Mass, people don't go to Mass anymore. It's losing its influence. And its influence that it's have is now all for like social change and moral change. Now, a really big issue for me in Northern Ireland is the imposition of abortion. And I saw a figure yesterday that over 4,000 preborn children have already been murdered in Northern Ireland. Over 4,000. Now, that's more than that died in the Troubles. So that's going to take the wind out of the sail of the Northern Ireland, the indigenous population growth. It's going to stagnate. It's transforming the spirit of Northern Ireland, because where it was in the past, it was a righteous country. It had religion, it had morality. That will be abandoned, because abortion is like a curse on any country. This is what we experienced in England. You lose all morality. Now, I was one of the first times I went to Belfast. There was a huge march in the town centre, and it was kids from East Belfast, from the Protestant areas, coming into Belfast to march in favour of gay issues and gay rights. And they were carrying the rainbow flag, and there was literally 5,000 kids from the Protestant areas marching in favour of sodomy. And I just thought, Northern Ireland's lost its spiritual compass. It's lost its moral compass. I know it's still got a lot of churches and there's still a lot of faith, but the high ground, the ruling elite is now at war with that morality. And so the whole province threatens to implode over time unless you can correct this. I mean, this is in the context of the Western world. The globalists are doing this to every, as you say, to every European nation. But Northern Ireland seemed to be an anomaly. It seemed to have a defensive mechanism to stop this. But now they've broken through. It's like the dam's been broke and the water's pouring in. And, you're in a desperate situation because you will drown very quickly. This is the warning from the mainland, from Britain. If you can't turn this round, you will be overwhelmed very quickly.
Right, Paul, you've raised a lot of points there, right? A lot of points. Let me try and deal with them if I can. The one thing I did want to say before it goes out of my head, of course, is that with the Irish Republic in having this massive inward migration from the third world, basically, then because there is essentially no border, these immigrants can come into Dublin, pop on the bus, up to Belfast, on the ferry, hello Liverpool, and nobody's really doing anything about it. So people don't understand that the conquering of the UK can be facilitated, can be accelerated through that which is happening in the Irish Republic. One reason people like me said, all this business about a protocol is rubbish. Just enforce the border, do it. And why shouldn't we have a border? I believe in borders. Good borders make good neighbours. So that's the first thing. On the abortion stuff, on that march, Paul, that you referenced, on that march, and all those young kids, you see, the way I look upon it is, I am sure that was completely manipulated and controlled by the people that I see as the Kabbalists, the Satanists, and all the rest of them who manipulate these, community groups and stuff. They're all over it, and they have been for a long time. So there's that point. So I mean, we've seen that they use kids to advance their wicked and evil agenda. So it doesn't surprise me, and I don't judge the kids too bad. I definitely judge the people who would have been manipulating that. And then the churches. You mentioned the churches. Back after the whole Belfast Agreement thing sort of come to a conclusion. I wrote a book back in 2007 called Unionism Decayed, and it was a pun on words. It was 10 years of when I was in unionism, so to speak. And I remember when I was writing the book, Paul, one of the stats that I did find that Northern Ireland had the biggest church-going population of any other part of the UK, you know, between Roman Catholics and different forms of Protestants and all of that. We were pretty much a church-going population. And I think that was a strength. Since then, because we embraced the wickedness of the Belfast Agreement, wickedness of sharing power with terrorists, right? Then I think we've been judged. And Paul, I get no pleasure from saying this, but I think we've been judged. We've fallen as a nation, and I think that can be true of the rest of the UK as well. Exhibit 1, Justin Welby. But in Northern Ireland, we fell pretty quick after that. So, you know, we see the thing that I guess, well, every time I'm across in the mainland, so to speak, what I see churches that are lying derelict, and it's, you know, so sad to see it, but you can see it. I saw it in Belfast on Monday, in South Belfast. Curious, unsurprisingly, a big empty church, you know. So if people turn their back on God, and this is just my view, well, then what do they expect? What do they expect? And amongst the most godless in Northern Ireland are the churches, which I would expect. I mean, that used to surprise me, Paul. I was thinking, how can that be? They're the people that are godly. No, they're not. No, they're absolutely, well, not at the senior level. Within them, there may be godly people. But I am now completely convinced that the satanic elements have conquered the church. Hence you have, you know, trams, archbishops, and all the rest of it, and we're having that here. And same in the Irish Republic. The Roman Catholic Church, regardless of what one might say about it, I think did provide some sort of a function, a bastion against certain things. It's been demonized out of all perspective, and now look what you've got. I don't know if any of you seen, this is just me going off on one of mine, but stick with me, it makes sense. The Irish entry for Eurovision. Has anyone seen that? No. This is the stuff I occupy myself with. It's basically someone dressed up as a demon with the horns and the claws. And you should check it out. It's on somewhere in my Twitter feed. You'll see it. And you know, Paul, I was looking back to 1970 when Dana won the Eurovision song, and if you look at from 1970 to 2024, you can see that Ireland's gone full Satanism. It completely has, like, you know, at every level. And will that happen here? Yes, I think it will. Will it happen in the rest of the UK? Yes, it will. With people like King Charles the Green on the throne, I think he's an apostate. But again, the Bible tells us all these things. None of it. I hope I'm not a doomster and people aren't thinking, oh God, he's depressing the hell out of me. All I'm saying is, you know, we have to see the world as it is, not as we want it to be. And then we can fight back, Paul. But I agree, you know, the scourge of abortion, I believe that's, again, part of the depopulation agenda. So encourage, you know, girls, first of all, maybe not to consider their sexuality such that they'd be attracted to boys. And then if they do, well, look, if you get pregnant, don't worry about it. You can get shot of it. Yeah, there we go. I'll tell you what, that picture, it's a hell of a long way from Dana to that. But I think there's more to that. That sums up. Yeah, there you go. Thanks for doing that. Yeah. And I think that's psychological warfare on the Irish people. That's showing you this is the new Ireland, you know, bow down and worship. And that was the old Ireland. And I got to say, I preferred the old Ireland. In business, I'll tell you what, over the years, I used to have business interests, north and south. And people from the UK would come across and we'd meet down Dublin. And they loved the fact that Ireland did seem to have an otherness about it compared to the, you know, that back then. I am going back about 20 years. They like that, you know, even the fact the Angelus would be wrong at 6 o'clock in RTE. But that was then. And now, well, that picture, that sums it up to me. You know, that's the real force that we're fighting to. That's the real force. Not Sinn Féin, not any of the rest of it. It's that force. Well, I think anyway. So,
yeah, it's like, go on, Joe.
Thank you, David. You're right. The debauchery, like that kind of stuff, is really prevalent in Manchester. In Scotland, I've seen kids saying that they love the devil with little signs and stuff like that, and it just breaks down Christianity, and our faith. It really does. It's horrible. And I just want to plug Northern Ireland again. Remember, we are registered as a political party in Northern Ireland, and we are looking for people to stand in local elections. So get in contact with us. Our admin emails there on the bottom. We've got a policy to scrap the Windsor Framework. Everything that David's saying that we're supporting that within Ireland. I mean, I've already talked with Jolene Bunting one time, and doing a couple of days of research before the stream is how the small business is affected in Ireland over the checks and stuff like that. And it was really damning. And another thing I researched yesterday is that Ireland used to grow a lot of its own food, and now nearly just over 50% of its food's imported. You know what I mean? Or more than that. I'm sure it was more than that. And so you're relying on the European Union and stuff like that. And we shouldn't be. And we talked about farming the other week. And so what affects us over here with our farming, it will affect Northern Ireland as well. Yeah. And you can't do better in the world than Scottish, Irish, and English beef and meats and veg. We've got the best in the world in England, and so the Irish are being cut off from their own food source, and that's going to be disastrous in the long run. And it was really a big effect I seen when I was doing research, getting the little photos for the banner, when I was looking at the little towns that are against it. All the small businesses, every single small business is affected in them towns and stuff like that. And Ireland still is a place of small businesses, farms and stuff like this, and they really are affected. And it's quite disturbing. But I mean, everything David said, I agree with, and everything Paul said, I've totally agreed with. So there we go. So go on, back to you, Paul. Or do you want to go, Pat?
Yeah, I'll just comment on a few things. So, as we all know, the pro-European Union people, the lefties, they always say, oh, Northern Ireland voted to remain, Scotland voted to remain, and London voted to remain. But, in London alone, we had over 1 million people vote for Brexit, and that got us over. That got the Leave vote over the line as it is. Let alone all the people in Northern Ireland who voted for Brexit and in Scotland. So it makes me sick when they keep trying to split our country up like that. Also, so I mean, from what I'm hearing from you, David, is the Windsor Framework has not been scrapped today.
No,
They've agreed to go back into the Parliament in Northern Ireland.
Yeah,
proceed with whereas most staunch unionists who oppose the EU don't want to do that until this Windsor Framework is scrapped. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Pat. They have done a complete U-turn. I think they were made to do it. I think probably at the end of the day, Jeffrey Donaldson was brought into the tea room at Westminster, sat down and told, right, Jeffrey, 2 years of this, that's enough. You're going to have to sell this. And that's exactly what he's doing. Don't be under any illusion that,
what are the TUC saying about it?
TUV.
Yeah, my former party, back in the days when I was in politics. I mean, I 100% support the TUV position in this one. It's the same as my own, namely that we know we're being conned. We know that the notion that nothing has literally changed. I mean, it's funny. It's a breakthrough. But nothing's changed of the Windsor Framework. Not a word, not a dot, nothing. But it's totally transformed everything. And that's because They know, and this is one of the real problems we have, that once the media have been waiting for this. Oh my God, they've wanted this for so long. They wanted the DUP to betray us because the media are a bunch of prostitutes, the worst people under God's earth, media, in my view, anyway. And so the power of the media is they're pushing it like mad all day. Breakthrough. No, it's not. And nothing's changed other than you're going to have the DUP if they get it over the line. And there's resistance from within, as you may have seen last night from some of the tweets that were coming out from within the meeting. There's definitely resistance. My local MP is, I understand, not convinced that this is something to go with. We'll see. But, ultimately, this is an awful thing to say, but it's true. That so many politicians, not you guys, but other politicians, money is everything. Money is everything. So listen, if those salaries are going to be cut further, and I certainly have spoken to one elected representative who did say, look, if Stormont doesn't get up and running, they're going to cut it back even more. What's the point in being in there? Because I'd make more money, just doing an ordinary 9-to-5 job. So
in a nutshell, the Northern Ireland is still in the European single market customs union.
Yeah. But Pat, so will the rest of you be in England, Scotland, and Wales. They're just not saying that. But remember, no divergence from the European Union on goods. That's at the heart of the deal.
Yeah. I mean, basically, all they had to do in that deal when they cut the deal with the EU, all they had to say is, look, the whole of the UK is coming out of the single market. Do you want the deal or not? And they didn't have the balls to do it. And it does sound like what you're saying, Dave, is that they deliberately done it to keep a little claw in it. And like you say, Labour are going to win the election and they're going to try and steamroll us back into it. But, I've got other theories, that the EU could collapse this year because you got National Rally in France, you got the AFD, Malone slightly anti-establishment, you got the Vox Party rising, and if the EU looks like it's going to collapse, you've got the farmers' protests going on, and if the EU does collapse, which I hope it does, and I'm sure everyone watching this and on the panel agrees with, that, if it does collapse, the Republic of Ireland are going to be in serious trouble. And like in 2008, we bailed them out. And hopefully we can come to some sort of economic agreement again. And they can move closer to us if the EU disappears, which I hope it does, because I think it is going to eventually collapse. But I've got family in Ballymena, and my cousin used to buy and sell cars. And they used to buy a lot of cars on the mainland, and they used to take them over to Northern Ireland and sell them in Southern Ireland. But they can't do it anymore. They've got to go through all this paperwork, and because it's in two different jurisdictions. But I don't know what the situation is from now today, because you said that they've sorted something out.
Well, they haven't. No, they haven't sorted anything out. And just FYI, I ran a business here in Northern Ireland. Within 2 months of the protocol coming into place back in 2020, we lost about £500,000 worth of business, right? So just so I fully get this one here, and yes, Pat, you made some really brilliant points there. And the fundamental thing, which I hope everyone will understand, is that whenever this deal was done initially between the British establishment and the EU, Boris Johnson pretending to be this neo-Churchillian figure, which he's not, much more of a Chamberlain figure, they left Northern Ireland in deliberately, because by doing that, they knew that it was going to cause problems. And then, we can solve the problems if the whole of the UK doesn't diverge from the EU. That's entirely deliberate what they've done, Pat. And so that's why this is a danger to Brexit, full stop. But the talking heads in the media won't say that. It's people like us will say that, but they won't say that. And so, that's how it is, in my opinion.
Yeah, another couple of points. A lot of people have told me that Sinn Féin are deliberately flooding third worlders into the Republican parts of Northern Ireland. And I'm not sure if that's going to work out for them, because these people, these third worlders, who are they going to rather want to be aligned with, the UK or Southern Ireland? I mean, that could be a problem for them. Also, what you said about the border, we was over in Belfast for the 12th of July celebrations last year, and I got the plane back in the evening, and the whole plane was third world. The whole plane, and we landed at where was it, Stansted, and everyone just walked straight into England. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Sinn Féin essentially are a Marxist party, aren't they? Masquerading as a Republican party. They're not. There's no intrinsic Catholicism left in Sinn Féin. I mean, when I go to Belfast, I'm just struck at their posters promoting same-sex marriage, promoting all sorts of third world issues, and also promoting this mass immigration, which is going to be predominantly Muslim, one way or another. So it's an alien religion. But I've had a lot of banter with Catholics on Twitter, because the Catholics they've got this new spirit of triumphalism that they're going to win. But I've said to them, you've lost your soul. You've sold your soul. The Catholic Church now is dedicated to destroy the traditional island, and they want to replace it with a globalist, multi-culti, multi-ethnic island through mass immigration. The Great Replacement is on their agenda. And I said, the only people who've got any hope of survival in Ireland are the Ulster Protestants. And the reason for that is they've got real sort of social unity. I mean, I'm thinking of things like the Orange Order. I'm thinking of this. They've still got this huge church network, but they've also got a spirit of resistance, which goes back to the early 17th century. The Protestants can still rekindle that, but they've got to be defiant against all the odds again. It's a bit like the siege of Derry all over again. They've got to stand firm, no surrender, because if they surrender to globalism, they will be washed away very quickly. What the Protestant community needs in Northern Ireland is leaders to emerge, outspoken leaders, courageous leaders who say, look, we're in an existential crisis here. There is a threat, not from Catholicism anymore, but from globalism. And we've got to rise to that. And I think that the Protestant religion is made to defend a community against globalism because of its moral integrity, because of its spiritual strength. It can actually resist, because globalism, as you say, it's a satanic ideology. It's about destroying families. It's about destroying the future. But Protestantism is the opposite of that. So this is what I say to the Catholics on Twitter. You're going to go to the wayside, and the Ulster Protestants are the only people with a chance of survival.
Well, the people that I find so strange are the triumphalist Irish Republicans out there in Northern Ireland. I don't actually see so much of it in the Irish Republic, because they know they're under siege. Never mind the apprentice boys of Derry being under siege in 1689. A lot of Irish people see, as we saw in towns like Tullamore, they're under siege from the Third World. But in Northern Ireland, there's this really terrible provincial Irish Republican mindset that you find in certain locations, and they think that, oh, Michelle O'Neill, she's going to be our first minister. I've seen it today already. They're instantly triumphalist, and they're so stupid, and they're so thick that they don't understand. This isn't a triumph. This is a defeat for anybody who cares about decency, as you say, Paul, about family values, as you say, about Christian values, as you say. Defeat for all those people. So then, who's it a victory for? Well, it's the other side, isn't it? I don't mean the other side is the other religious side. I mean the dark side. That's who it's that's who this is a victory for, And but I have to say, you mentioned that, for many centuries there's sort of been a resistance in this community in which I am just one person. But it is in us, and people who know me have known me a long time now. I'm still resisting, Paul. No possibility of compromise. When some people said no surrender, they actually literally mean that. I'm one of them. I can argue the case from 101 different ways that people want, but in the final analysis, here I stand, and I'm not moving, I'm not changing. And that was my problem with Trimble back in '97, Donaldson in 2024, and then people say, "Oh, but you just haven't moved on." But I don't have any need to move on, because any movement is moving us away, Paul, from all those things that you and Pat have talked about, the important things. Why should we move away from them? No, we have to stand firm. And even if it's only a few of us, do you know what I mean? I don't, it doesn't matter, never matter. I never courted popularity, because if you want to be well received, if you want to, I was banned by all national media broadcasters, particularly the BBC. I'm not allowed to appear in any of them. Why is that? Because I stand up unambiguously and hopefully reasonably coherently for things that I reckon most people listening, watching this would agree with. We're just normal, decent people doing our best. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, of course, everyone does. But when I see the betrayal going on at this point in Northern Ireland, then Cody says
I've got a couple of questions for you, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to talk too much. Yeah.
Do you think now that is this the end of the DUP and someone like the TUP will rise up now? Do you think that's going to happen?
Hope so. We need patriots in whatever party rising up. The DUP they've grown fat, lazy, and complacent, because they've been a bit like the Tories have been in power for 13 years. They're going to get booted out because of that. And the DUP, since they took over whenever the Ulster Unionists finally, because the Ulster Union, people don't remember this, the Ulster Unionists were the biggest party, the party of government, before they embraced the Belfast Agreement, and it destroyed them. And I was delighted about that. I was happy to stand against David Trimble. I remember doing it well. It was good. And now I hope that the DUP gets smashed into a million different pieces.
Well, you stood in election, Dave. You stood in election.
I stood
against David Trimble.
I did. I stood against two people. I stood against David Trimble, where I live here in Upper Bann, and I stood against Peter Robinson, then leader of the DUP in East Belfast. So my footprints are all over, my fingerprints are all over. Now, I lost, but I like to think that my one lasting achievement was when I stood in East Belfast against Peter Robinson, who was betraying us back then. And I wonder, has he been involved in this recent scenario? I wonder. Sorry. Yeah. No. So my votes made sure that Peter Robinson lost his seat. Excellent. Oh, well, there you go.
One other question. So I hear from quite a few different people that if the vote ever happened in Northern Ireland, whether to leave the UK and become a united Ireland or not, there is a fair amount of Catholics who would vote to remain in the UK. Is there any truth to this?
100%. There's a whole swathe of Roman Catholic people who understand a simple thing, and that is they know which side their bread is buttered on. They know that the UK benefit system, and although I disagree with some of this, by the way, but it doesn't matter. They know that it's not in their financial interest, and they're not zealots. Also, some of them are wakening up to what we've talked about with Dublin. They now see Dublin as not being the sort of Ireland that they necessarily want. Where people stand in the streets.
Vote come about, David? How do they instigate this referendum? What I just described. How is that?
Yeah. So the constitutional mechanism is, and it was put in the Belfast Agreement, that if a majority of people here, if the Secretary of State determined, and this is it's so vague, Pat, it's laughable. If the Secretary of State determined in his estimation that the time was right to have a referendum, then he can call it. And here's the trick in that one, because again, we can see right through it. That means that they'll only ever call it if they think they're going to win it and take us out of the UK. And that ain't going to happen. So I don't lose any sleep over it, Pat.
Secretary of State would have been from the ruling party of the UK.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So okay. Very good point. So we will have a Labour Secretary of State, as we all agree.
I've got you.
So that Labour Secretary of State might, but then I think they all basically wet their pants when it comes down to the reality. How are you going to cope with maybe 500,000 angry unionists who mightn't just want to go along with it? I think at that point they just probably have a faint and they'll not do it. So I don't worry about referendums. You know, I worry about all the things that we've chatted about, the stuff that Paul's talked about. I worry about the ongoing great replacement. I mean, listen, I do travel around Northern Ireland, and I've got a couple of properties I flip between, and the one thing I see is demographic change. Let's call it diversity and enrichment. And I see that. And it's not just in like Belfast you see that, but I can go up to the North Coast where I've got a place. And, you know, there's changes happening there as well. Go to some other cities, you see that. And it's the same in the UK. I mean, it's no different. Go to Tar Hamlets and see how you get on. But I see it here too. And therefore, the fact that the Irish Republic worries me because they can change things very fast because the 5 million population. Well, we're not even 2 million. And look at how it's changing. So, yeah, we got to watch out.
What we have to recognise is that the ruling political establishment, the ruling political class is fully committed to our replacement by third world immigrants. They are our mortal enemies. They want to destroy us. The question I want to really ask you, David, is this, but you've answered it already, because surely Catholics, genuine Catholics, people who actually have faith and who believe in morality, surely they recognize this as well now. Now, in the past, we felt in the UK, on the mainland, that the DUP and even Sinn Féin were dissident parties. They were not part of the ruling governing class. But what you're saying effectively is that they've been absorbed into it now. They're just other politicians. They're members of the political class. They're only interested in their own careers, their own finances, promoting themselves, and they've lost connection with the people. It's the people who are under threat, because as the great replacement kicks in, they take over. They take over the institutions. We're seeing this in Britain through the Equality Act. They become the civil service. They become the governing class. The people who are supposed to protect you and your society are not British anymore. They're not even Irish. They're from India. They're from Nigeria. They're from Pakistan. They're from Iran. They're not British, and they're not interested in us. They're only interested in replacing us. And the people have to wake up, because we have to become a dissident movement. Yes, we have to be, in effect, in total rebellion against the political order. We have to form new battalions, new political parties. This is what the National Housing Party is. It will actually speak into that reality and say, look, unless we come together as a political force and assert ourselves and assert our interests and claim our future and the future for our children, unless we do that, we will have no future, because the people who we've trusted in the past are now our mortal enemies. Wake up to that. That's the mind switch that people have got to make. Not only the political parties, but all the, as you say, the media institutions, the BBC, the police force, the universities, they're all in it together. They're as thick as thieves, and they're only interested in advancing themselves as a governing class, a political class, a ruling elite, and they're not bothered who they rule over. It could be Nigerians, it could be Pakistanis. We are surplus to their requirements. They're pushing us aside, and we've got to wake up. We've got to have a spirit of rebellion again. And it's the spirit of defiance in Ulster, which actually encouraged us through the years, Dave, on the mainland. When we saw the likes of Ian Paisley, when we saw the Protestant people standing up and say we will not be bullied into submission, that gave us a lot of oomph to fight back as well. And we need that again from Ulster.
Well, Paul, if you go to the 12th of July, I know you guys have been to that, right? I mean, I find myself when I go to the 12th, that spirit that you're talking about, the spirit of rebellion, of resistance, in the ordinary folks, it's still there. That hasn't gone. And the reason it's still there with those people is that they haven't been compromised. They haven't been bought off. They haven't been, lured into positions where then they have to do the bidding of their masters. And the other thing is, you mentioned a very good point about, if you take the Home Office, which is defending our borders, if you look at the people in the Home Office, they're not defending our borders, folks. They're making sure those borders stay open. So you're right, Paul. You're right. The whole establishment, every part of it has been captured. I mean, I did a podcast today on the fact that universities, the Russell Group universities, including the old one I went to, 100 years ago, Queen's University Belfast, it now requires, if you are a student, A-level student in Northern Ireland, you want to go to Queen's to study what I did, which is economics, right? You have to have an A, a B, and a B, right? That's it to get in. But guess what? If you're coming from, elsewhere, let's say, overseas, 3 days will suffice. 3 days will suffice. So there you go. Clear discrimination against British people, young people, trying to get up on a leg up in their career, and maybe university's good, maybe it's not, mind you, but anyway, clear discrimination. That's the establishment. When people talk about the great replacement, it's a conspiracy theory. No, it's not. It's everywhere. You guys know it. People watching this know it. They are the people they want to replace is us and the generations that follow us. And I've got grandkids. I was talking to someone about this today. People say, look at the latest ONS stats that came out today. Did you see them? They're a bit of a horror show for what lies ahead in the next 15, 20 years. But I sort of turn it and say, well, look, that may be the case, but it doesn't matter. It goes back to, again, fundamentals. You have to resist. If there's one enemy at the gate and there's a million of them, doesn't matter. Still going to resist. Now, I might lose. Who knows? I thought Pat made a great point, and that is, and it's a positive point, because I do like to try and get the positive angle on it. The European Union, which is part of this nexus of great evil, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And I'm loving the populism that I'm seeing across Europe, in Germany, in Holland, in France, in a lot of these countries. I see populist movements rising up. Where is it in the UK? I see this corrupt political establishment. I call it the Uni Party, because to me, there's no difference between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak. They're the same. We need to smash the Uni Party in the UK, and in the Irish Republic, they need to smash Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin. That's the Uni Party. And that's our hope. We resist, and Pat, we fight back, because these people don't have any of our interests at heart, and they will destroy us, including farmers. Again, very sorry, just a quick one on farmers. I attended a meeting of local farmers last year. I went up to see them in the north Limavady direction. Went to see this group of farmers, and when you're talking to these guys and the pressures they're under, your heart goes out to them, because they put the food on our table, and believe you me, globalism wants to stop that. They want us to starve if at all possible, or they want to make the food supply chain, dodgy, volatile. And yet, without farmers, this is the thing, they're going for farmers because farmers could make the food. That's if they're not trying to genocide us with experimental therapies. Better not go into that on YouTube, but whatever. So look, the globalists are the enemy everywhere in the world, but there's signs of a fight back, a populist fight back in Europe. Let's hope it happens here.
What I would say about that, David, is that Europe has become fluid politically. You saw in Holland, where the farmers had the rebellion, Geert Wilders gets elected. In Germany, the AfD has just had another great result in an election. Just missed out winning the seat, got nearly 50% of the vote. In Spain, the Vox, we got Marine Le Pen in France. It's all fluid. The established parties, the Conservative Party in France has collapsed, and Marine Le Pen's party has taken its place. And Pat always makes this point. Brexit has actually held us back politically, because the fluidity that was coming into the British political system with the likes of the BNP and then UKIP was taken away by Brexit. We put all our eggs in that basket and thought that Brexit was going to deliver strong borders, it was going to deliver sovereignty, it was going to deliver sensible government, and it's failed because Nigel Farage took the basket and gave it to the Conservative Party, and they just pulled it back in and resurrected the old order.
Well, you see, yeah, well, that's why I refer to Nigel Farage as a Judas goat. And I also think Richard Tice is another Judas goat. These people deliberately and specifically are put in place, and people put, ordinary people put their trust in like the Brexit party. And you saw what he did. Farage rolled over, he gave it to Johnson, and then Johnson did what Johnson did. And if people are rushing to reform, I hate to say this to people, if you think
you're right, David, you say it.
Yeah, reform. It's another Judas goat party led by Richard Tice, who desperately wants to be in the House of Lords. We know that. I mean, he blocked me years ago because he couldn't take a bit of truth speaking. Now, this is the way the British establishment does it. They throw up, like, pretend opposition parties like these, but they're not really. The AFD is an opposition party. What you're seeing with the Dutch, the Farmers Party, those are genuine opposition parties. This is what we need in the UK. But I think it comes from the grassroots up. And I agree with you. Brexit was a grand diversion. I think they did that to take the sting out, because we were getting fluid and people were saying, I'm sick of this, what am I change? So everyone then says, don't worry, we've got your Brexit now, go back and sleep for another 100 years. And that is probably a fair point. But I wouldn't blame the people who voted for Brexit. It's the manipulating political liars at Westminster and those in the media, and in the media, pundits included. So many pundits, again, we want to keep our place, so we'll say there are Andrew Neils and people like this. Those people are very happy to play the game of the establishment. We shouldn't. We shouldn't play by their rules. That's the only way we can save ourselves.
But who doesn't get credit, Dave? It's the BNP, because the BNP between sort of 2002 and 2009 educated and stimulated the British working class. They brought patriotism back into our communities. Now, the UKIP took on that baton and used that political capital. But what they've done now, the Conservatives, is they've drained the patriotism out of the working class again. They've drained that. The working class in this country has been decimated. Our communities are being decimated. They're being overrun with third world immigration. In Ulster, you can't do that to the working class because of the sectarian traditions, because of the Orange Order, because they have a resistance, they have a rebellious spirit there. You cannot, like what they did in our communities in London and Manchester and Birmingham, they just dumped hundreds of thousands of Pakistanis and Nigerians upon us. They can't do that on East Belfast, because East Belfast will stop it. Now that's you see, the BNP stimulated people, was a catalyst for resistance. We've got to, you see, if you're going to be a real catalyst for genuine resistance, you're going to be demonized by the elite. But all they were doing really was a legitimate campaign to say Britain belongs to the British. We must have pride in that.
I think the thing is, the British establishment fears the working class, and anything that is likely to energize the working class, any party, anything at all, they crush it. They crush it every time. You see it to a different degree with the likes of Tommy Robinson, for example. He mightn't be everyone's cup of tea, but Tommy does Tommy's own thing, and you can see that his appeal is within the working class, let's say. And the establishment hates that. They absolutely hate that. And your point about what they've done to the working class communities in England in particular, honestly, I feel so bad, and I obviously stand with the communities in places like Rotherham and Oldham and whatnot, where all these grooming gangs and whatnot have operated with seeming impunity. I think they set out to destroy the British working class. And they got away with it, Paul, to a significant degree, because that coincided with all the other things, collapsing the Christian order, and then, of course, the immigration. Harder for them to do over here. You make a great point. It's harder, not impossible, but it's harder for them because we do have a better protection. So who knows? Maybe that, maybe in some ways, we will be that bit which does remain British, which seems weird to say, But, listen, there's part of us and we're going nowhere. We are going nowhere. And that means we're not changing. And as I said earlier, we're not surrendering. Sorry.
40 million Indigenous British people left. You know what I mean? That's a hell of a lot of people. So
yeah,
a lot to fight for. And the National Housing Party was created for an alternative to these other semi-anti-establishment parties, UKIP, Reform, Heritage, Reclaim. Unfortunately, the leadership of the National Housing Party are banned from all those parties because we had the audacity to campaign to prevent the Indigenous British people from becoming a minority in a democratic and peaceful way within the law. That was our crime. And we are an alternative, and we're in Northern Ireland. We can stand in elections in Northern Ireland. We want to stop permanent settlement immigration. We don't want any more refugees coming into our country and getting citizenship. This is the difference between us and those parties, what I just mentioned. They are in favour of all those things. So you need to read the manifestos of these parties before you support them. But please get in contact with us if you'd like that to stand in local elections. Go over to you, Dave.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say I agree with all of that you've talked about. The other thing I would massively support is mass deportations. We need to be, if we don't do it, we're doomed because the numbers are too great. The demographics go
one step at a time, Dave. One step.
Yeah, well, I'm giving you an extra edge now. Mass deportations in due course, because if we don't do that, I think we got big problems. I think who was it called for that there the other day?
But Dave, we can't even convince the British public to stop permanent settlement immigration.
I know. We don't want
to, impossible.
You can't put the cart before the horse. Go on, John.
But I'm just giving you additional vision as what can I say? Deport the masses that shouldn't be here.
We've had our hour. Thank you very much, David. Very interesting stuff. Paul Rimmer, as usual, has smashed the chat. People just love Paul Rimmer. And, of course, David and Pat. Pat asking the questions. But, once we sort our borders out, and we're looking at the minimum, there's 3 million illegal people here. I think it's a bigger number than that. All them need to go back. Our prisons need to be emptied of all these crooks who've come over and stuff like that, and make room in the prisons for our own people that we've got to keep locked up. Not everyone else around the world who've already come here with criminal convictions. You know what I mean? We've got to stop it.
Shall I just tell David what our policy is and our long-term project for the estimated 2 million illegals in this country? So what we are suggesting is leave the Refugee Convention, make it illegal to turn up on boats, automatic 3-year prison sentence for illegal entry into the country. Any illegals caught in the country, 3 years prison sentence. But we will set a date, we'll give a date for an amnesty to leave the country. And if they accept this amnesty and leave the country, give their fingerprints, DNA, photograph at an airport or seaport when they leave, they are free to go banned for life if they haven't committed a serious crime. So there's 2 million illegals in the country. We need to build thousands of detention centres, and these detention centres will be constructed so they can be turned into social housing for our own people once these people have left. So once we catch the illegal immigrants, they stay in detention until they organise their paperwork to leave. Because as you know, that is one of the main problems, is they don't have identities. You cannot deport someone without an identity, and they use that. The Tory government, the Labour government are never going to do mass detentions because these illegal immigrants, they just know that they're not going to do that, so they won't give their real identity. And as I said, you cannot deport people without an identity to another country.
Yeah,
I've got to say, there is a normal repatriation clause in the government's policy now. But go on, David, go on.
No, Pat, that all makes sense to me, and I completely agree. Final thing from me is just a final thought. Rather than having the British military being sucked into wars in foreign parts in the Middle East or Ukraine or whatever, one of my suggestions would be, I'd like to see all our British armed forces on the southern border, ring of steel. Nobody enters the UK. Nobody lands on our southern beaches because we defend our country, which is the primary function of government anyway. So yeah, let's man up these weak-willed non-entities in government.
Well, one of our Dave is to completely leave NATO, and like you say, we shouldn't be involved with Ukraine, be involved with the Gaza war either.
Yeah, get out of NATO. NATO's the enemy. NATO's the enemy. NATO is the axis of evil.
Put the Royal Navy in the Channel.
Yeah, 100%, Pat. That I've been calling out for a long time. That's the only way. I don't want Boris Johnson trying to get young British men to join up to be slaughtered in the meat grinder in Ukraine. No, if they want to join up and fight on our southern, support our border, then that's a different thing. That's okay. So it's priorities, isn't it? We should prioritize the United Kingdom, our sovereignty, our borders, our people, and frankly, I'm not interested in the rest of the world.
David, you wasted in Belfast. We want you to get out of Belfast and go into Downing Street to be our Prime Minister, because you talk a lot of sense, mate, and we would support you the whole way. But what we have to remember, we're a Christian party, Dave. God is in control. And if we as a nation return to the Lord, embrace Christian morality again, strengthen our families, we will have the spiritual power to overcome the evil that faces us. It's a spiritual battle that we're in, and we're hoping that the people of Northern Ireland lead us in that battle, because we know there's some great spiritual people over there who are solid Christians. We need to revive our traditions. We've got a fantastic heritage. We don't want to be cut off from our roots. Our roots feed the tree, and we need a strong oak to overcome. But we have people, as David said, we are the resistance. And with God's power, with God on our side, we shall overcome and we shall have the victory. Thank you.
You're mute, John. John, you're mute.
John's muted himself. He's going to make it difficult.
John, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I weren't muted. But David, thank you very much. That was an awesome, awesome show. Loads of knowledge there from you. And again, the legend status certainly, definitely fits your profile. And of course, the mighty Paul Rimmer. He knows a bit about everything, does our Paul. You can never hardly catch him out. And there, Patrick McGinnis coming up with all the questions and the redirects and that. But what a fantastic show. I'd just like to go through the chat. Thank you, everyone in the chat. And if I think correctly, Gerald Fisher, thank you for joining the party. Thank you, Callum's on tonight. Good evening, Callum. Thank you, chat. You have been very interactive in the chat, as usual. As usual, we do have a good, really intelligent chat, we do. And it's not thing for calling people's names. Everyone comes up with valid points and valid issues. But again, David, thank you very much, mate. Thank you very much.
Cheers,
Paul
everyone.
and Pat, and thank you, everyone in the chat, and we'll see you next week. Good
Thank you,
evening.
Dave.
Thank you.
Paul. Thank you, John.